Hey, this is George with Truck Driver Nation, and what I'm wanting to tell you about is going to be these 10 freight dispatching concepts that are being sold to folks, and this ain't doing you no good, okay? And this is only 10. Oh my God, I had it set up as 30, and once I started making it, I was like, there's no way I'm going to be able to make it to 30. That's just too many. So I just did 10 of them. That's the main ones. So I went through, sifted through the main ones I see that I'm hearing a lot back by people. So the whole point is this is not, obviously we want you to choose Truck Driver Nation. I want to teach you. I want to show you how this actually works because until you build up the confidence and the experience and the exposure to somebody like me that actually has the experience, they can carry you the distance. You're going to just keep spinning circles. Oh, should I do it? Should I invest my money in it to take a course to actually become a freight dispatcher? How long will it take me to actually get going and making money? Because what you're doing is bullshit right now. You're not making no money. Hey, I get it. I was there. But that being said, take these points, look at them, and understand what we're different. We're different in so many ways. It's not the boast. It's because I worked my ass off to build this course so that you wouldn't have to suffer. So you understand what logistics is. And I'm in logistics to the day I die. And that being said, even now, I'm looking at semi trucks because I'm thinking about, even though I do this because I'm gonna get a big semi truck, I'm going back in the truck myself, because that way I can be back at the truck stop to help build my business because I do freight dispatching as well. But I've got a certain way that I do freight dispatching where I don't actually have to dispatch no more. But that being said, definitely get a hold of me if you really want real help in the logistics industry and you don't want to be sitting there twiddling your thumbs, sitting on your toilet, trying to figure out what the hell went wrong. Why are you not making the revenue? It is not what they're saying it is. It is completely different. And the way I set it up was the only way that I could make it do what it needed to do for you, but it still comes down to your effort. So I hope you enjoy these 10 points. If you enjoyed it, reach out to me, say, hey, give me 10 more. Really and truly, it's not quite 30, but it's like was 27 of them, but I can make it 30. I was going to do another level of 10 and then another level of 10, because it damn took me all day to do this. But that being said, I hope this helps you out, gives you a better understanding of logistics, and obviously how me and my team here at Truck Driver Nation can help you to become a freight dispatcher that starts making money immediately, but you'll see how it actually builds on itself consistently, and that you really don't have to look nowhere else other than Truck Driver Nation. Even when you get past the course, we can still help you carry you all the way. Who can tell you that? Because we're actually recruiters too. But anyways, I hope that helps you get a little better understanding. Enjoy the content, and I look forward to seeing you. Make sure to go to truckdrivernation.com and like or subscribe. Man, I build this crap for y'all to enjoy. So at least give me a like or subscribe. I mean, if you want to hate on me, well, hell, hate on me. People do that one too. But that being said, like or subscribe on this, and I'll give you some more true insight of what it looks like for us inside the logistics industry. But thank you so much. Enjoy, and we'll talk to you on the other end. As we get ready to move on into this, I want to mention something to you because a lot of people are, well, how do you know this? And how do you know that? This is going to be like a life experience for me. It's one of those deals where I did this for so long in my career that, when a person gets ready to write a book, they reflect back on to their life experiences and everything that's gone on in their life and all the problems that you've seen, that what held me back personally as I was dealing with these trucks and actually being an owner operator and trying to figure out how to scale because I was in the 18 wheelers right before I ever stepped outside and got to the office aspect, to the brokerage, to the freight dispatching, to the truck driver recruiting. And those are the three main pockets that I've concentrated on after I quit driving trucks. And freight dispatching had always been exposed to me inside the truck when I drove. So the point I want you to get here before we step off into this is for you to understand where this knowledge base comes from. It wasn't something just built overnight. So when I'm speaking with you and I'm telling you all these points, it's not just what I learned from the industry, but it's what also I've accumulated secondary, being exposed to the in-office settings and the virtual world of the industry and the way that it's being set up. Every point that I go across is just not random knowledge. You know what I mean? Yeah, I sit back, and I watch. It's like when I go deer hunting. first thing I got to do is I got to find out where these jokers are running around at, and that's the whole point. I walk through the woods, I walk down the pass, I cross the next mountain, I go down, I look for, deer crap, deer scrapings, based on the time of the year, and I start setting myself up. Okay, where am I going to hunt? So first, you don't take nothing with you. You just go look, and you spend days out there. Take your four wheeler as far as it go, get off the four wheeler, going down to the woods. And that's how this kind of come together. I'm looked at all the signs and the different things of the terrain on how people are, one, running the industry right now, two, where the industry's going to, three, what's the actual practical application inside the industry of how we actually operate. What are the things that are holding back my fellow truck drivers that they can't see because right now they're in the field. They're out there working, they're pushing the trucks up and down the interstate, and they don't always have, they're a singular entity because they don't have a lot of back office support that is looking for things inside their favor. They're actually relying on somebody else to assist them so they can achieve their goal as an owner operator. And I've taken all those points and I put them together, and that's how this knowledge base came along and the practical application. So as you go through, I want you to understand where this comes from. Okay. But anyways, inside of that, let's move forward. And I hope this compels you to walk through this webinar because or this presentation, because I have a feeling this sucker is going to be long because there's so many points, and this is not all inclusive. That's what makes it worse. But that being said, this is the point of view that I'm seeing right now in the industry, that as I write this up, this affecting me right now are the biggest points that are causing people that want to become freight dispatchers in the logistics industry. What is a wide open world for you? There is so much revenue to be made, but thing is, people lose the momentum because they don't have a back end source that's pushing them, saying, yes, you can do it. That has to be inside of you, But that being said, I hope this inspires you just that hair bit to at least go through this. This is free. It gives you the ability to understand what we're doing here at Truck Driver Nation and understand what to look out for when you're searching out this resource of becoming a fellow person in logistics. Because remember, not everybody's out there looking out for the benefit of us in logistics. And so this is my effort to look out for myself and look out for other folks as well. But anyways, that being said, let's move on forward.
Quit your job and become a freight dispatcher. Really, let's clear something up right away. There is no way I would just quit my job because you are telling me I will be an instant success. There's a lot of information out there that makes this look simple, fast, and effortless. But most people fail because they're following incomplete guidance, unrealistic expectations, or advice from people who've never actually built a working dispatch operation. That's where things go wrong. First, people underestimate startup time. This is not an overnight transition. You're building systems, learning the industry, and developing real relationships. That takes time. Second, they have no real client acquisition plan. They don't understand how to consistently bring in carriers, build broker relationships, or position themselves in a way that actually generates revenue. Third, they expect immediate income. And when it doesn't happen in the first few weeks, they assume it doesn't work. In reality, they simply didn't stay long enough to build momentum. Fourth, they don't have emergency savings. So when things move slower than expected hits and they quit before the foundation is even built. Fifth, they don't treat it like a real business. They treat it like a shortcut or side hustle instead of a structured operation that requires discipline, consistency, and accountability. But there's another piece most people completely miss. This can start part-time, and that part-time phase is where most people misunderstand the opportunity. You don't have to be a fully established freight dispatcher on day one. You can start part-time while still working your current job. In fact, that's often the smartest way to begin. At Truck Driver Nation, we show you how to do exactly that, how to start building real skills, real relationships, and even real income before you ever transition full-time. Because those early part-time clients don't just appear because you said you're available. They come because you demonstrate knowledge, consistency, and understanding of the math behind the business. That's what builds trust in this industry. And as that starts to happen, something else changes. You start to see results yourself, not just financially, but realizing I can actually do this. That confidence shift is what turns part-time effort into a real career path. Now, people often expect this to happen in a matter of weeks, and it can, but only if you're fully engaged. That means you have to participate, ask questions, and communicate with your instructor. If we don't know what you're struggling with, we can't help you fix it. No one can read your mind, and no course can work if you stay silent. We see it all the time. People come in saying, I took a freight dispatch course and I still don't know what I'm doing. And the truth is, that's not the industry's fault. And it's not always the training's fault either. It's usually a lack of engagement and follow through. That's exactly why this structure exists, to stop people from repeating the same mistakes over and over again. And if you're seeing this before you've already wasted time and money on the wrong path, then you're ahead of the curve. You're actually in the right place at the right time. We're not here to sell hype, and we're not here to pretend this is easy. We're here because too many people are getting into this industry with the wrong expectations and the wrong guidance. And when that happens, they don't fail because the opportunity isn't real. They fail because the direction wasn't right from the start. You'll make $10,000, $20,000 per month fast. Let's be real about where that idea breaks down for most people. First, nothing happens without carriers. If you don't have trucks, you don't have a business. That's the starting point most people underestimate. Inside Truck Driver Nation, we don't leave that part to chance. We help you actively build access to owner operators and truck drivers so you're not stuck trying to figure out where your first clients come from. And more importantly, you're not forced into heavy upfront risk. The structure is designed so you can begin working with carriers in a way that aligns with your early cash flow so you're not overwhelmed by costs before you're even stable. Second, people confuse revenue with profit. Money moving through the business is not the same as money you keep. There are operational costs, tools, communication, time investment, and coordination behind every load. If you don't understand that clearly, you'll misread your own progress. That's why we can break it down in detail. You don't get guesswork, you get real calculations so you understand what's being made, what's being spent, and what's left over. Clarity is what keeps people from quitting too early or overestimating where they stand. Third, people underestimate expenses and complexity. Most beginners walk in thinking this is just cause and coordination. In reality, there are systems, software, communication flows, and decision-making processes involved. The difference in our approach is transparency. We show you how to operate efficiently, how to reduce unnecessary costs, how to streamline tools, and how to avoid paying for things you don't actually need early on. The goal is simple. Keep you lean while you learn, not overloaded while you start. Once you see the full picture, something shifts. You stop guessing day to day and start managing your time like a business owner. That's when progress becomes predictable instead of random. Fourth, freight markets fluctuate. This is not a fixed income environment. Some weeks are strong, some are slow. If you don't understand that cycle, you'll think something is wrong when it's actually just normal market movement. We don't just explain the market, we show you how to respond it. When freight shifts, your strategy has to shift with it. That includes positioning trucks, understanding lanes, and adjusting decisions based on demand instead of emotion. This is where experience matters. Over time, you learn that logistics isn't just about movement. It's about timing, positioning, and decision-making under changing conditions. And fifth, scaling is where most people get stuck. Even when they start gaining traction, they don't know how to expand without adding stress or confusion. That's where structure matters. The goal is not just to get you started, it's to show you how to scale in a way that doesn't require unnecessary complexity or wasted effort, because growth should feel like refinement, not chaos. And here's the truth behind all of this. Most people don't fail because the opportunity isn't real. They fail because they're missing structure, clarity, and direct guidance on how the system actually works in practice. The goal isn't to overwhelm you with theory. It's to make sure you understand the real mechanics behind the business so you can actually operate it. And if you choose to work with us, you're not stepping into a guessing game. You're stepping into a guided system where you're expected to engage, ask questions, and participate, because no course works if it's passive. This only works when you're involved, communicating, and applying what you're learning in real time. That's the difference. Not hype, not shortcuts, just structure, execution, and accountability. Finding carriers is easy. Let's be real about this idea. Carriers are not sitting around waiting on a dispatcher. They are constantly getting calls, messages, and offers every single day. So if you think this is just about finding carriers, you are already starting with the wrong mindset. What actually makes the difference is not access. It is execution, specifically how you build trust, how you communicate, and how consistent you are over time. This is also where people fail the most, because they want immediate results. They want everything fast, instant, and simple. But this is a step-by-step process, not a shortcut. Inside Truck Driver Nation, we don't teach you to chase carriers blindly. We show you how to actually build this the right way, starting part-time while you still have your job, and developing into a full-time operation once you have built the foundation. And that part-time stage is important because it removes pressure. You're not forced to gamble everything on day one. You build skills, relationships, and confidence while you transition gradually into the business. Now, here is something critical. You are not competing for attention. You are planting seeds. Most people reach out once or twice, don't see results, and move on. That is why they fail. In reality, this is about consistency and timing. You plant the seed, you give it space, and you come back and nurture it. That follow up and patience is what separates professionals from beginners. But trust is the biggest barrier in this industry. Carriers are not skeptical for no reason. They have been burned before, overpromised, underdelivered, bad communication, and broken expectations. So they are cautious by default, and that is not personal, that is experience, which is why you don't win by being loud. You win by being consistent, clear, and relevant. And that means understanding their real pain points, not just loads, but downtime, rate consistency, communication speed, loading and unloading delays, fuel costs, and the pressure of keeping a truck moving. Because if you don't understand what actually affects their business, you will not know how to speak their language. Most beginners fail here because they talk too much about themselves instead of solving what the carrier actually cares about. Now, let's talk about credibility. Most people enter this space with no testimonials, no proof of performance, and no track record, and then they expect trust immediately. That does not work. Credibility comes from real experience and real results, and in actual operations that can come from driver relationships, feedback, and settlements. Proof system is working, and that is something we walk you through step by step so you understand how to build that foundation properly. Communication is the next piece most people underestimate. You have to know when to reach out, how to reach out, and how often. Too much communication feels pushy. Too little communication kills momentum. The skill is balance, and consistency is everything. If you reach out for a few days, stop, restart later, and repeat that cycle, you never build momentum. Inconsistency kills credibility faster than anything else in this business. You want to be remembered, because if you are not remembered, you are not chosen. That is also where differentiation matters. You are not just another dispatcher making calls. You are building relationships where carriers recognize you, trust your communication style, and remember how you operate. That personal connection is what separates you from everyone else in their inbox and voicemail. Now, here's something important. This is not about desperation. You do not take every owner operator just to say you have clients. This is a business, and like any business, relationships that are a good fit long term, because it is not just about getting carriers. It is about keeping the right carriers, and that ties into the final truth. Finding carriers is not easy, but it becomes possible and scalable when you understand how to communicate properly, stay consistent, and build trust over time instead of chasing instant results. That is exactly what we teach at Truck Driver Nation. We don't just talk about sourcing carriers. We show you how to actually do it. Real conversations, real positioning, real structure. So you are not guessing your way through it, because once you understand how this really works, you stop chasing carriers and you start building relationships that actually last. Every truck needs a dispatcher. Stop for a second and really think about that idea, because on paper it sounds simple. Every truck needs a dispatcher, but in reality, the industry doesn't work that clean. And that is exactly where most people misunderstand this entire business. First, many drivers self-dispatch, and there is a reason for that. Burned before, sitting in truck stops getting loads that don't actually make financial sense, loads that keep the truck moving but don't keep the business profitable, while someone else is still taking a percentage off the top. And in the end, the driver is still the one carrying the risk, fuel, maintenance, insurance, and downtime. So they start thinking they are better off doing it themselves, even if it costs them time and efficiency. Second, some carriers already have internal staff, but that does not automatically mean optimization. Most of the time, these are small fleets, 5 trucks or less, which actually represents a massive portion of the industry. And even then, internal dispatching is often just coordination, not true profit maximizing strategy. So there is still room for improvement if you actually understand the market. Third, experienced operators prefer control, and that is not ego, that is experience. Because when you have been through enough cycles in trucking, you learn quickly what works and what doesn't. So if you walk in trying to take over everything, you lose them immediately, which is why the approach matters more than the pitch. Inside Truck Driver Nation, we show you how to handle this properly, starting part-time, not as a limitation, but as a strategy, because part-time execution allows you to build trust slowly without forcing control, while you demonstrate value through better decisions, better communication, and better load selection over time. And that gradual proof is what actually builds long-term relationships. Fourth, dispatch fees reduce margins. That is true. But the real question is not the fee itself. It is whether the value you provide exceeds that cost. Because if a carrier understands their baseline expenses, fuel, insurance, maintenance, driver pay, downtime, and required profit margin, then they can clearly see whether a dispatcher is helping or hurting their operation. And this is where most people miss the mark because they never actually show value in numbers. They just talk about what they do instead of proving what changes that benefits the owner operator to make them come to grips on how this has been a missed need at Truck Driver Nation. We teach you how to understand real market structure, how freight pricing actually moves, and how to position yourself so your value is measurable, not just claimed. So your fee does not feel like a cost, but instead feels like a performance improvement in their business. Fifth, value is not clearly demonstrated in most cases, and that is the core problem because carriers do not make decisions based on promises. They make decisions based on results they can see, better loads, better communication, less downtime, stronger consistency, and overall improved profitability. And that leads to the final truth in all of this. Every truck does need support, but not every approach creates value. And not every dispatcher understands how to operate in a way that actually fits the realities of this industry. Because when value is clear, trust becomes easier. When trust becomes easier, control stops being a barrier. And when control is no longer a barrier, real partnerships start to form. And that is the difference. Not just finding carriers, not just talking about trucks, but actually building relationships that hold up in the real world of logistics, where execution always matters more than intention. If you truly follow out training and mentorship, then you will succeed. Next point is you'll have clients within days. Slow down for a second and really understand what this claim is supposed to mean, because on the surface it sounds attractive, but in reality it is one of the most misunderstood expectations in this entire space. First, sales cycles take time because carriers are not making fast decisions off one call or one method. They are evaluating consistency, communication, and whether you actually understand their business before they ever trust you with their trucks. Second, no referrals exist yet. And that is a major factor because referrals are what build momentum in this industry. And at the beginning, you are starting from zero trust, zero reputation, and zero history, which means everything has to be earned step by step through real interaction. Third, there are no proven results yet. So you are not walking in with leverage. You are walking in with potential. And that means your early stage is not about rushing to close deals. It is about building credibility through repetition, communication, and follow through. Fourth, limited networking is a real barrier because you are not only competing with other dispatchers, you're competing with established relationships that carriers already trust, and breaking into that space takes time, consistency, and proper positioning. Fifth, high competition is constant because carriers are being contacted all the time, which means the difference is not who talks the most, but who communicates, follows up the most consistently, and demonstrates real understanding of the business. Now, here is where this connects something deeper inside Truck Driver Nation. One of the biggest advantages we bring is not just training, it is real logistics involvement, including truck driver recruiting, which immediately changes the equation for our students because instead of starting from scratch with no infrastructure, you are stepping into a system that already understands how to connect with drivers and owner operators. That matters because most people fail not because they cannot learn dispatching, but because they are missing the support structure that actually helps them build the business around it. And this is where the difference shows up. A lot of people talk about business, but very few actually understand how to build one, especially when it comes to numbers, margins, and real logistics decision making. And it is not about formal education. It is about thinking ability, problem solving, and being able to understand both the subjective side of relationships and the objective side of math and operations. What we focus on is developing that mindset because in this industry, you cannot survive on one track thinking. You have to be able to analyze, adjust, and make decisions in real time based on what is actually happening in the market. And beyond that, we give you leverage because simply being inside the system gives you access to knowledge, structure, and integration into logistics processes that most beginners never get exposed to. That leverage is what shortens your learning curve because instead of trying to figure everything out alone, you are operating with guidance, structure, and real world application. And this is where the short term and long term strategy connect. Yes, you start with part time execution. You learn how to communicate, how to build relationships, how to understand the math, and how to manage early interactions without pressure. But those small wins begin to stack over time. And as they stack, something important happens. Part time relationships turn into consistent clients. Consistent clients turn into stable revenue, and stable revenue becomes the foundation for scaling into full-time operation. Here, clients within days. The real message is not speed without structure. It is early momentum with the right system where you are learning, building, and applying at the same time instead of waiting for everything to be perfect before you start. Because once you understand how all of this accumulates, the course is not just information. It becomes a system that builds into itself over time. And that is where real growth actually happens. Dispatching is just booking loads. We all wish it was this easy. Truth is, if you believe that, you're already missing the real business behind trucking, because dispatching is not just about finding a load and moving a truck. It is about managing an entire system that changes every single day based on market conditions, human needs, and real financial pressure. First, you have to understand the load board and the freight market itself, because what you see on a board is not the full picture. It is just surface level availability. And underneath that, you have freight lanes, seasonal movement, regional supply and demand, capacity and balance, and shifting pricing based on economic conditions in the United States. You also have to factor in the financial status of the market itself, because when fuel costs rise, when production slows down, when imports shift, or when certain industries like automotive, oil, agriculture, or rail demand change, the entire flow of freight changes with it, and that directly impacts what loads are even worth. Taking second, you cannot forget the driver's needs, because this is where most people fail. Drivers are not just trucks on the road. They are people with financial obligations, families, time limits, and personal goals. And some of them want to stay out for weeks or months at a time, while others want structured home time. So your job is not just to move freight. It is to align freight with their lifestyle and business expectations, how long they want to stay on the road, whether they need consistent weekly income, whether they need pre-booked loads, and whether you can realistically keep them moving without gaps that hurt their bottom line. Because if you cannot keep a truck consistently loaded, or if you are forcing them into freight lanes that do not support their revenue goals, then the relationship breaks down quickly, no matter how good your intentions are. Third, brokers and communication play a major role in this process, because every load depends on negotiation, clarity, timing, and relationship building. And if communication breaks down at any point, rates suffer, trust suffers, and opportunities disappear. Fourth, paperwork is not optional detail work. It is part of the financial system, because rate confirmations, billing accuracy, compliance requirements, and documentation are what ensure money actually moves correctly, and mistakes here directly impact cash flow. Fifth, planning is what ties everything together, because dispatching is not reactive. It is strategic. You are not just booking today's load. You are positioning next week's consistency and the overall monthly profitability of the truck. Now, when you combine all of this, you realize something important. Dispatching is not just booking loads. It is decision-making inside a moving market that includes freight lanes, supply and demand shifts, economic cycles, and carrier expectations all at the same time. And this is where experience becomes the difference. Inside Truck Driver Nation, we teach this from real-world logistics experience, not theory, because we have lived through the same problems carriers deal with every day, including the real challenge of keeping equipment consistently profitable, whether that means understanding why a truck needs $11,000, $12,000, or $13,000 a week to survive, or why that number changes based on market conditions and lanes. Because once you operate in the real world of trucking, you understand quickly that profitability is not guaranteed. It has to be managed, protected, and negotiated through every decision you make. And that leads to the real responsibility of a teacher. You are not just moving freight, you are influencing outcomes. And if communication is not clear, if expectations are not aligned, and if strategy is not shared properly, then you can unintentionally damage the operation you are trying to support. That is why trust, communication, and transparency matter so much, because a carrier is not just handing you a load. They are trusting you with their business, their income, and in many cases, their livelihood. So the real question is not whether dispatching is just booking loads. The real question is whether you understand everything that happens before, during, and after that load moves, and whether you can manage those moving parts in a way that actually produces consistent results. Because when you understand that level of complexity, you stop thinking like someone booking freight, and you start operating like someone managing a business system inside a national supply chain. And that is exactly what we prepare you for at Truck Driver Nation. Not just how to find loads, but how to think, analyze, communicate, and execute like someone responsible for operations. Because this is not theory, this is real logistics, and real logistics demands real understanding, not shortcuts. What's up next? You don't need sales skills. Please do not think business works without sales skills. You're already misunderstanding what dispatching actually is, because this is not just booking freight. This is communication, negotiation, accountability, and decision making under real pressure, all happening at the same time every single day. But even beyond, what most people miss is that this is a business skills industry, not just a talking skills industry. And that means understanding numbers, equipment, compliance, risk, and whether what you are putting on the road is actually safe, profitable, and capable of doing the job. First, you have to understand the business side of equipment and operations, because this is not theory. This is real freight moving 3,000 to 4,000 miles at a time. And that is not just a trip. That is a full operational cycle with fuel costs, maintenance, inspections, driver fatigue, weather conditions, and mechanical stress on every mile. And if someone does not understand what it takes for that equipment to climb mountains, come down grades, pass inspections, and remain compliant under federal regulations, then they are not just risking freight, they are risking lives, because this industry operates under real accountability, not assumptions. This is why compliance, safety, and professionalism matter, because under federal oversight, responsibility does not stop with the driver. It extends through brokers, carriers, and everyone involved in moving that freight. And that means your decisions as a dispatcher are part of a legally accountable chain. Second, sales in this industry is not about pressure. It is about representation. Because when you are talking to a broker or a shipper, you are not just selling yourself, you are selling the capability of the carrier, the reliability of the equipment, and the professionalism of the entire operation behind that truck. And that is where most beginners fail, because they cannot confidently explain value, they hesitate under questions, or they cannot justify why a load is priced the way it is. And that hesitation kills deals instantly in logistics. Third, this industry is extremely crowded. Carriers are competing for freight. Dispatchers are competing for attention, and brokers are constantly evaluating who they trust. So communication cannot be weak, inconsistent, or unclear, because the moment you leave doubt in someone's mind, you lose leverage. And when a carrier asks how a rate was negotiated or why a load is worth taking, you need to be able to answer with clarity, not guesswork. Confidence in communication directly impacts whether you keep or lose opportunities inside Truck Driver Nation. This is where we separate theory from real execution, because we don't just teach you how to talk. We teach you how to operate as a business-minded dispatcher, how to understand numbers, how to evaluate freight profitability, and how to make decisions based on real market conditions instead of assumptions. We give you tools to actually run the math. So you are not guessing whether a load makes money. You are seeing it, calculating it, and understanding what it does to the carrier's bottom line before you ever commit to it. Because when you understand the numbers, you also understand your responsibility. And that responsibility is not just getting freight moved. It is protecting profitability, protecting safety, and protecting reputation at every step of the process. And that reputation matters more than most people realize, because everything you do is tied to compliance, documentation, and professionalism. And even though you may be operating under a business structure, your decisions still reflect the carrier, the broker relationships, and your own credibility in the market. So this is not about building weak relationships or short-term deals. This is about building strong, reliable, long-term connections where carriers know you are serious, brokers respect your communication, and your operation stands on real professionalism, not guesswork. And that also means understanding when to walk away, because not every broker is worth working with, not every deal is worth chasing, and not every situation is worth forcing, especially when communication becomes unprofessional. Our time is being wasted without value. In real logistics, time is money, and hesitation costs both. That is why experienced operators operate differently. They communicate directly, they evaluate quickly, and they protect their time and margins by staying focused on relationships that actually perform. And that is the difference we teach at Truck Driver Nation, not just how to enter the industry, but how to operate in it with real awareness, real structure, and real accountability. So you are not just participating in logistics, actually functioning at a professional level inside it. Because once you understand this fully, you stop thinking like someone trying to become a dispatcher, and you start operating like someone responsible for real freight, real equipment, real money, and real outcomes that affect real people every single day. What's up next? You don't need sales skills. Please do not think business works without sales skills. You're already misunderstanding what dispatching actually is, because this is not just booking freight. This is communication, negotiation, accountability, and decision making under real pressure, all happening at the same time every single day. But even beyond, what most people miss is that This is a business skills industry, not just a talking skills industry. And that means understanding numbers, equipment, compliance, risk, and whether what you are putting on the road is actually safe, profitable, and capable of doing the job. First, you have to understand the business side of equipment and operations, because this is not theory. This is real freight moving 3,000 to 4,000 miles at a time. And that is not just a trip. That is a full operational cycle with fuel costs, maintenance, inspections, driver fatigue, weather conditions, and mechanical stress on every mile. And if someone does not understand what it takes for that equipment to climb mountains, come down grades, pass inspections, and remain compliant under federal regulations, then they are not just risking freight, they are risking lives, because this industry operates under real accountability, not assumptions. This is why compliance, safety, and professionalism matter, because under federal oversight, responsibility does not stop with the driver. It extends through brokers, carriers, and everyone involved in moving that freight. And that means your decisions as a dispatcher are part of a legally accountable chain. Second, sales in this industry is not about pressure. It is about representation. Because when you are talking to a broker or a shipper, you are not just selling yourself, you are selling the capability of the carrier, the reliability of the equipment, and the professionalism of the entire operation behind that truck. And that is where most beginners fail, because they cannot confidently explain value, they hesitate under questions, or they cannot justify why a load is priced the way it is. And that hesitation kills deals instantly in logistics. Third, this industry is extremely crowded. Carriers are competing for freight, dispatchers are competing for attention, and brokers are constantly evaluating who they trust. So communication cannot be weak, inconsistent, or unclear, because the moment you leave doubt in someone's mind, you lose leverage. And when a carrier asks how a rate was negotiated or why a load is worth taking, you need to be able to answer with clarity, not guesswork. Confidence in communication directly impacts whether you keep or lose opportunities inside Truck Driver Nation. This is where we separate theory from real execution, because we don't just teach you how to talk. We teach you how to operate as a business-minded dispatcher, how to understand numbers, how to evaluate freight profitability, and how to make decisions based on real market conditions instead of assumptions. We give you tools to actually run the math. So you are not guessing whether a load makes money. You are seeing it, calculating it, and understanding what it does to the carrier's bottom line before you ever commit to it. Because when you understand the numbers, you also understand your responsibility. And that responsibility is not just getting freight moved. It is protecting profitability, protecting safety, and protecting reputation at every step of the process. And that reputation matters more than most people realize, because everything you do is tied to compliance documentation and professionalism. And even though you may be operating under a business structure, your decisions still reflect the carrier, the broker relationships, and your own credibility in the market. So this is not about building weak relationships or short-term deals. This is about building strong, reliable, long-term connections where carriers know you are serious, brokers respect your communication, and your operation stands on real professionalism, not guesswork. And that also means understanding when to walk away, because not every broker is worth working with, not every deal is worth chasing, and not every situation is worth forcing. Especially when communication becomes unprofessional, our time is being wasted without value. In real logistics, time is money, and hesitation costs both. That is why experienced operators operate differently. They communicate directly, they evaluate quickly, and they protect their time and margins by staying focused on relationships that actually perform. And that is the difference we teach at Truck Driver Nation, not just how to enter the industry, but how to operate in it with real awareness, real structure, and real accountability. So you are not just participating in logistics, actually functioning at a professional level inside it. Because once you understand this fully, you stop thinking like someone trying to become a dispatcher, and you start operating like someone responsible for real freight, real equipment, real money, and real outcomes that affect real people every single day. Listen up. Truck Driver Nation is an actual course, and to believe you don't need trucking knowledge is so screwed up on so many levels. This is probably one of the most expensive lies being sold in freight dispatching courses today, because people hear that statement and think trucking knowledge doesn't matter, that they can take a course, watch a few videos, jump on a board, and suddenly start directing equipment across the country. And that's exactly where a lot of people get themselves into trouble. Truck drivers, owner operators, carriers, brokers, they can spot inexperience faster than most people realize. They don't have to meet you face to face. They don't have to know your background. They don't even have to know where you're sitting. Give them a few minutes on the phone, and they'll know whether you understand this business or whether you're simply repeating information somebody else told you. The good news is you don't need 20 years in a truck to become a successful freight dispatcher, but you do need somebody that has already lived it, somebody that's already made the mistakes, already learned the lessons, already figured out what works and what doesn't. And that's where Truck Driver Nation separates itself from most freight dispatching programs. We're not trying to convince you that experience doesn't matter. We're helping you leverage ours while you build your own, because this business is built on details such as the equipment matters, trailer types matter, dimension, weight limits matter, axle configurations matter, permits matter, compliance matters, because if you don't understand what a truck can legally and physically haul, you can book what looks like a great load on paper only to have the driver arrive and discover the freight won't fit, the weight is wrong, the dimensions are wrong, or the equipment isn't configured properly. Now you've wasted fuel, wasted time, damaged relationships, and cost somebody money because you didn't understand what you were looking at. The same thing applies to freight lanes. Most people think dispatching is finding freight. In reality, it's positioning equipment. Anybody can find a load. The question is whether that load puts the truck where it needs to be tomorrow, next week, and next month. One bad decision can turn a profitable week into an expensive one. Send a truck into the wrong market, send it into an area with weak outbound freight, send it somewhere that doesn't support that particular equipment, and now you're burning fuel trying to recover from a mistake that could have been avoided. That's why understanding how across the country matters, not just where freight is today, but where it's going, why it's moving, what industries create it, what seasons affect it, what holidays affect it, what economic conditions affect it, because freight follows business and business follows demand. Then you have market rates. Everybody wants to negotiate rates. Very few people understand what creates rates. Fuel prices move, capacity moves, demand moves, the economy moves, production moves, imports move, exports move. And in the end, everything affects pricing. And if you don't understand what is driving the market, you're negotiating from hope instead of knowledge. Then comes negotiation itself. Not the kind of negotiation most people think about. Real negotiation, the truck, the freight, the lane, the broker, the customer's expectations, operating costs, profitability, and understanding when a deal makes sense and when it doesn't, because not every load is a good load. Not every broker is a good broker. Not every opportunity is worth taking. And obviously, if you spend enough time in logistics, you'll learn very quickly that there are people who know what they're doing and people who are playing games. And one of the biggest skills you can develop is learning the difference before they waste your time. At the end of the day, dispatching isn't booking freight. It's understanding an entire transportation system and making decisions inside that system every single day. The equipment, freight, lanes, rates, compliance, paperwork, communication, profitability, and even the relationships. Every one of those moving parts affects the final result. And that's why people who think trucking knowledge doesn't matter usually struggle, not because they aren't smart enough, but because they were never shown how all the pieces fit together. At Truck Driver Nation, that's exactly what we're focused on, helping people understand the business behind the freight, helping them see what experienced carriers, dispatchers, brokers, and owner-operators see every day, so they're not guessing. They're making informed decisions. Nobody leaves knowing everything. That's not realistic. I wish I didn't have to say that, but they do leave understanding what matters, what questions to ask, what mistakes to avoid, opportunities to pursue, and how to operate with confidence in an industry that rewards knowledge and exposes inexperience very quickly. And that's the difference between taking a dispatching course and actually learning how to build a dispatching business. Work 2 hours per day. This is one of the biggest misconceptions being sold in freight dispatching today, because people here work 2 hours per day and immediately think this business runs itself, when the reality is freight moves when freight moves, not when it's convenient for you. Loads are time sensitive, appointments change, weather changes, equipment breaks down, brokers need updates, drivers need answers, and every decision affects somebody else's business, which means if you're going to be a professional dispatcher, you need to understand that this industry requires attention, communication, and accountability. The reason so many people fail is because they come into dispatching expecting simplicity. Then they discover that drivers call when they have problems, brokers call when they need information, paperwork has to be completed, settlements have to be reviewed, compliance has to be maintained, and client relationships have to be developed. And suddenly they realize there is a lot more happening behind the scenes than somebody advertised in a social media video. Then you have client acquisition, which is where many people get stuck because they spend all their time worrying about load boards before they ever learn how to build relationships. attract carriers, communicate value, and create trust. And without trust, you don't have clients. And without clients, you don't have a dispatching business. What makes Truck Driver Nation different is we're not fantasy where you click a few buttons and money magically appears. We're showing you how to build something real. We teach you how to start part-time while you're still working your regular job, how to gain experience while reducing risk, how to build confidence before making major financial decisions, and how to develop relationships that can eventually turn into long-term clients. More importantly, we help solve one of the biggest problems new dispatchers face, finding carriers. Because let's be honest, a lot of courses teach people how to dispatch trucks, but never show them how to actually get trucks, and that's major them how to actually get fail. Through Truck Driver Nation, you're not trying to figure everything out alone. You're learning from people already operating inside the industry, people who understand recruiting, carriers, owner-operators, freight markets, equipment, compliance, profitability, and the day-to-day realities of logistics. That means you're not spending months making the same mistakes that thousands of other new dispatchers make. Instead, you're learning how to identify profitable opportunities, communicate professionally, how to build credibility, how to understand the numbers behind the business, and how to grow in a way that is sustainable. Because the goal isn't working 2 hours per day. The goal is building enough knowledge, enough systems, enough relationships, and enough confidence that you can operate efficiently and effectively. There's a huge difference between being lazy and being efficient. Lazy people look for shortcuts, professionals build systems. And that's exactly what we're focused on, helping you understand the business side, the operational side, the communication side, the recruiting side, and the growth side of freight dispatching. So you're not just learning how to book loads, you're learning how to build a business. By the time you've gone through the process the right way, you're no longer wondering what to do next. You're making decisions based on real knowledge, real numbers, real experience, and real relationships. That's why so many people struggle when they chase the promise of 2 hours a day. They're chasing a result without understanding the process. We focus on the process first, because when you understand the process, the results become much easier to achieve. And that's how you avoid becoming another person who bought a course, got frustrated, and quit. Instead, become somebody who understands the industry, understands the opportunities, understands the risks, and has the support, tools, and guidance needed to build something that can actually last. Dispatching is passive income, not on dispatching best day by itself. Don't be surprised that this right here is one of the biggest misconceptions in freight dispatching today, is the idea that dispatching is passive income. It sounds appealing. It sounds simple, and it sounds like something everyone would want. The problem is that it simply does not reflect how this industry actually works. The reason so many people become frustrated is because they begin with expectations that were never realistic to begin with. They are told that freight dispatching is easy, that a few hours of effort each week will produce consistent income, and that once a load is booked, the work is finished. Then reality sets in. A truck breaks down, a pickup appointment changes, a broker needs updated information, a driver has a problem on the road, a customer needs an answer. Paperwork must be completed, documentation must be verified, communication must continue. Suddenly, people discover that dispatching is not passive at all. It is a business built on responsibility, communication, and problem solving. At Truck Driver Nation Day, we meet people who have already invested in other courses. Many of them come to us with the same story. They learned terminology, they learned basic concepts, they were shown how to search for freight. Yet when real situations occurred, they did not feel prepared. They were left trying to figure things out on their own. That is exactly why we built our program differently. Our objective has never been to sell a dream. Our objective is to help people build a business that can survive in the real world. The trucking industry is one of the most demanding industries in America. Every day, owner-operators are making equipment payments, insurance payments, fuel purchases, maintenance decisions, and business decisions that directly affect their families and their future. The people supporting those owner-operators need to understand the seriousness of that responsibility. A successful dispatcher is not simply someone who books loads. A successful dispatcher becomes a valuable business partner. They understand how to communicate professionally. They understand how to build trust. They understand relationships. They understand how to respond when situations change. Most importantly, they understand how to create value for the carriers they represent. This is where Truck Driver Nation separates itself from many of the programs being sold today. We focus on helping students understand what happens after the load is booked. because that is where long-term success is created. We focus on practical application, real-world situations, and the kinds of challenges that dispatchers encounter every day. The truth is that revenue in this industry is tied directly to activity, performance, and relationships. Relationships must be developed, relationships must be maintained, relationships must be earned. Carriers continue working with people they trust. Brokers continue working with people they trust. Success grows when credibility grows. That is why we do not promote the idea of passive income. We promote the idea of building a professional freight dispatching business based on knowledge, service, consistency, and results. If someone is looking for a shortcut, they will probably be if someone is looking for a sustainable business opportunity and wants to learn from people who have spent years operating within the industry, then Truck Driver Nation was built specifically for that purpose. Because at the end of the day, the goal is not to create students who complete a course. The goal is to help create dispatchers who can confidently serve carriers, solve problems, build relationships, and grow a business that lasts.
All right, that's the end of the presentation for those 10 points. I hope that helps you out a lot. Just remember, if you want to get a hold of me directly, go to truckdrivernation.com, go to the homepage, go down to the QR code that is for Telegram. That bypasses our phone number and gets you directly to me, because us, like every other carrier, we all love Telegram these days because it bypasses a lot of mess and can give that one-way communication between us and yourself. And outside that, I hope this gives you what you need as far as understanding just 10 of the points. There's a lot more points of what you need to look out if you're going to actually be a freight dispatcher. But anyways, thank you so much. Please like or subscribe. Outside that, be safe. And if you just decide to go and get signed up, I look forward to working with you. Make sure to stay engaged so you can be successful instead of the situations that I see going on a lot out there. Thank you so much, and talk to you then.
So, if you want to learn how to work from home as a freight dispatcher or own a Truck Driver Nation franchise, which is already proven and tested, you can reach out to us through the website truckdrivernation.com or send us an email to support@truckdrivernation.com. Reach out directly to the owner of Truck Driver Nation through 815-846-3608 or to our back office team 210-343-1118. Hope to hear from you. Talk to you soon.